Uh, but by this time, he's set up, this is written around 1803, around the turn of the century. Let me find it, and I just want to. Literary system, source of black books. Oh, actually, that chapter is not there. But I remember what. He makes 3 points. He says that you cannot compromise on civil rights. 3 points. Number 2, African Americans, blacks, Negroes as they were called then, they need money for education and training. And third thing, voting rights. Very simple. And so he's positing these 3 points against Booker T. Washington's philosophy. Those were kind of brought together in that poem, you remember. And the poem is an exaggeration, but essentially it conveys the message of the two leaders. All right, so when you come to the Harlem Renaissance, you have a large number of writers, all of them very distinctive in their own way. But Robert Thorne, a white scholar, 1965, and it was still called the Negro novel. He passed away a few years ago. And he says that you can largely divide the Harlem Renaissance writers into 2 groups. One is the Harlem School, he called them. These are the younger writers like Langston Hughes and Wallace Thurman, Zora Neale Hurston, Bruce Nugent, who was the openly gay writer during this period, Dorothy West, and a painter named Aaron Douglas, and a kind of a journalist named Benjamin Davis. And these people gathered in Harlem, and they wanted to shake things up. And they are also known as the Fire School, F-I-R-E, Fire School. Why? Because they published a magazine called Fire, and they published only one issue. Wallace Thurman was at the center of it. And Langston Hughes and Wallace Thurman were roommates. And this place was named by Zora Neale Hurston, Niggerati Manor. Can you see how the word comes? Yeah. People use that word in daily. What are they called? Daily literati?
Literati, they just use it.
Literati, yeah. So here she's taking the word N-word, and then she takes the word literati and makes it niggerati. So that was the apartment. And now Harlem itself, I said yesterday that Harlem Renaissance was not confined to Harlem, but Harlem was the major center. It was a nice Jewish and white community, and you can depend upon real estate people and business people to come up with wonderful schemes. So blacks were moving from the south to the north. That was one of the first comments someone made. I think it was Neil Hunt, right? Yeah, great migration. So someone comes with a wonderful idea. Why not turn these apartments into rooming houses? And you know what that means? So you're students, you probably are used to this. So you have a nice 3-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment, and you turn them into rooming house, and believe it or not, at this time, each room was given to a person for 8 hours. So you can have the room from 8 in the morning for 8 hours, and so 24 hours were divided. And so 3 bedrooms will probably be with 9 people, and then someone will probably sleep in the living room. There is some shared space, the kitchen and the living space. And these people, they couldn't even pay rent, and they used to have rent parties. And they are mentioned in the novels, especially The Blacker the Berry by Wallace Thurman, but some other novels too. And typically what they would do is they'll buy some liquor, they'll buy beer or rum or whatever, and then provide some snacks. If it was a fancier version, they would also provide some music. And so people come at the door and you have to pay $1 to get in, and you can stay for the evening and have drinks and snacks. But there were some pretty strange kinds of parties too. They were called brown bag parties. Can you guess what that was? Anyone come across the reference, the brown bag party? Someone is standing at the door, and if you are darker than the brown bag, literally the brown bag that you get from the little grocery store here, then you were not allowed to come in. Because blacks also developed, because of racism against them, this horrible color cast. Some of you have read The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. This little girl, Piccola, wants to have a lighter skin because she thinks her mother would love her more if she had a lighter skin or she had blue eyes. So this is the kind of reality. So the Harlem School is the younger people. Then the others are the old guard, and you would have people like Du Bois. You will have Jessie Fawcett, who became the literary editor at the Crisis, and she helped a lot of younger writers. And then others who shared the aesthetic with the Harlem School, but who are kind of not part of this, because the Harlem School also is kind of associated with a kind of open lifestyle, a bohemian lifestyle, and drinking and sexuality. They were not approved by the middle class black people, and that was often and ultimately the magazine Fire disappeared, and it failed because middle class people disliked it. Crisis magazine published by Du Bois was acceptable, and Du Bois never supported this. Du Bois was always saying, please create positive images. Look at how many negative images white people are creating, and you need to push back on that. And their attitude was, and that's where Alan Locke was come in, we're going to look at his essay, The New Negro. And Alan Locke said, try to get your inspiration from the African arts. Because if Picasso can get inspiration from West Africa, why can't you? He tried to push them towards a certain level of discipline. But these younger writers were very independent, and they rejected all of them. So there's the Du Bois, the more traditional, the more conventional, didactic, and then there is Alan Locke, who is pushing them into certain directions of the arts and philosophy. He was a professor of philosophy. And then there is the Harlem Renaissance younger writers who were saying, no, we want to be able to express ourselves independently. Do you have a copy? I understand you have given, it's not here. The Negro Artist in the Racial Mountain. Who is doing that today? Someone is. Yeah. Can you read the last paragraph of that? Just the essay.
So if you want me to read from the Blare of Negro Jazz Band?
Yes, absolutely.
Let the blare of Negro jazz bands and the bellowing voices of Bessie Smith singing the blues penetrate the closed ears of the colored neo-intellectuals until they listen and perhaps understand. Let Paul Robinson singing Water Boy and Rudolph Fisher writing about the streets of Harlem and Jean Toomer holding the heart of Georgia in his hands and Aaron Douglas's drawings, strange black fantasies, cause the smug Negro middle class to turn from their white, respectable, ordinary books and papers to catch a glimmer of their own identity. We younger Negro artists who create now intend to express our individual dark-skinned selves without fear or shame. If white people are pleased, we are glad. If they are not, it doesn't matter. We know we are beautiful and ugly too. The tom-tom cries and tom-tom laughs. If colored people are pleased, we are glad. If they are not, their displeasure doesn't matter either. We build our temples for tomorrow, strong as we know how, and we stand on top of the mountain, free within ourselves.
Isn't that beautiful? And guess what date? What's the date?
1926.
1926. You would think this is someone writing in the 1960s. so clear. And then a real part in that, well, I shouldn't talk more because Shweta is going to do a presentation.
Talk
she's,
more, sir.
she's talking about he's talking about the difference. He said middle class blacks and middle class whites, they are the same. They are interested in assimilation, and they have, but he says low down black, low down folks, that's where the true art will come. And he starts with an image of this imaginary writer. We kind of guess who we have in mind. And I think he has that person, County Cullen, unfairly in mind, that he wants to be right. And so he says we need to get over that. This desire for whiteness is a problem. So this is this is actually the image of the Harlem Renaissance younger writers. This is the aesthetic of the younger writers. So in terms of the aesthetics, we'll go from that to Richard Wright's The Blueprint for Negro writing, and then of course we get to black arts. We may not spend too much time on that. But this book, Cain, comes at the beginning of the Harlem Renaissance. When is it published? 1923. This is pretty early. And we'll talk about the periodization. I made a reference that I was very wrong about periodization. I can also confess to you that when I finished my PhD dissertation, we call it there, you call it thesis, either way is fine, the PhD project, I don't think I understood this writer. So if you don't understand some of these writers, it's quite excusable. I can tell you that in novels of the Harlem Renaissance, I have about 4 or 5 nice pages, but I don't think I knew what I was talking about. It means nice, but it says nothing. So I've already confessed 2 things. I was wrong in excluding Zora Neale Hurston. I was wrong in trying to say that books published after 1933 should not get attention, and because Zora Neale Hurston published her novels, one in 1934 and one in 1937. The most famous one, which has sold millions of copies, was published in 1937. But anyway, 1923, this is almost the first major book of the Harlem Renaissance, which is not to say that this is the first major Harlem Renaissance work. Why? Because individual poems, short stories, they were getting written. Crisis was publishing a lot of short stories, essays, poems by these writers. But how many of you have read the whole thing? Be honest. No need to pretend. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's great. What is it that strikes you about this book that is unique or distinctive, or at least distinctive?
The language.
Language? What about the language?
Use of folk English. I mean, I had read Alice Walker first.
Yeah.
So then I backtracked thinking that this is the woman who maybe has started the use of folk English. Because I read The Color Purple first. So, but I think she must have learned how to use folk English from Zora Neale Hurston. I don't know if other writers of the era were using folk English.
Yeah, okay, but I agree with you that language is remarkable. What specifically about the language?
About the language,
Yeah.
it seemed the language changes in the sense that authorial third-person narration would be in standard English, but when the folk characters would come in, they would use the conversations would be in rural folk English.
Dialectical?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to write it, but actually it's more than dialectal, because it's also very lyrical. His imagery is very completely unexpected. For example, let's just take a look at a few lines from Carintha, which is the opening story. So even if you have not finished reading, I hope you have, and some of it is in black voices. Yeah. And he starts with a little, and by the way, the mixture of poetry and narrative throughout the book. The skin is like dusk on the eastern horizon. Oh, can't you see, her skin is like dusk on the eastern horizon when the sun goes down. Men had always wanted her, this Carintha, even as a child. Carintha carrying beauty, perfect as dusk when the sun goes down. Old men rode a hobby horse upon the knees. Young men danced with her at frolics when they should have been dancing with their grown-up girls. And then, it is a lot of references here. This is all, of course, taking place in Georgia. That's where the first part of the story takes place, and also the third part takes place. Carintha is a woman. Men do not know that the soul of her was a growing thing ripened too soon. They will bring their money, they will die not having found it out. Carintha at 20, her skin is like dust, and so on. What do you take away from Carintha?
Very materialistic perspective is, there's an overwhelming thing, materialism, body corporeality is coming up, while not just when we read Carintha, but when we read Becky.
Yeah. But in this case, there's also the dominance of lust.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the girl, and men have started lusting after her while she was still 5 years old. And they are hoping for her to grow up so they can have sex with her. That's part of that story. And each story is different. Becky is the one which has 2 sons, right? Yeah. Or is that Karma?
Who was Becky, the white woman who basically was...
Who had 2 Negro sons.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's completely defined. Yeah, and people will want to know who she had, whether both the sons are from the same man or both the sons are from 2 different black men, she would not tell. Now in the South, in the early part of the century during Jim that would be a huge social violation, but she refused. And then of course, there's Karma, the woman who wears overalls and is very independent. And then of course you have poems like Song of the Sun and so on, Evening Song, which are interspersed. I particularly like to look at Reapers, which is pretty early on, and it's very short. And you notice the image of violence. Black reapers with the sound of steel and stone are sharpening sights. I see them place the horns in their hip pockets. And then we say, and there a field rat, startled, squealing pleads, his belly close to ground. I see the blade bloodstained, continue cutting leaf and shade. What does that image signify for you? Because all through he's showing a lot of, first of all, what we come to know now called microaggressions. There may not be violence against women like Carintha, physical violence, terrible violence, but there is microaggressions. And then of course this section ends with what? Blood Burning Moon, which is also included in Black Voices. And what is that story about? Anyone remember? Anyone? 6 people have read the whole book. What is Blood Burning Moon about? It's about what was being conveyed by Billie Holiday. It's about a lynching. And
Black calling nigger, the nigger identity which has been, it has been questioned everywhere. So
yeah, but the other interesting thing, I'm already looking here, let me find it. There's Fern, and they're different backgrounds. Fern is Jewish, Becky is white, the other women are black, some of them are very light skinned. Then you have Esther. How is Esther different? Quickly, anyone?
Is she like this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. What's so odd about her? What happens to her? Because the plot here is not that significant. The plot is very thin in all these cases. It's the evocation of the person or the event
does she like to sit on the gates and talks to white?
Well, she's middle class. But she doesn't have any company around. Her father owns business. So among African Americans in the South more than the North, but even in the North, I heard a definition of middle class long time ago. If you are just above the subsistence level, then you are middle class. If you live inside poverty and someone had a job as a chaprasi or a janitor, right? That's middle class. Because you have a reliable income. Because most people didn't have reliable income. So Esther's father owns a store and she helps to run it. She's very lonesome. She's full of fantasies. And then she focuses her fantasies on this guy named King Barlow, who is the preacher. And he's big and burly and not a particularly attractive character. And she's 27, as people will say, spinster time. And she's not married because she has never had any social possibilities. There are no compatible, men and women, around her. So then she goes to this place. King Barlow has come to town. He's a burly and loud preacher, an uncouth guy. And she goes there, and this is on page 26. Well, I surely damn, excuse me, but what brought you here, little milk white girl? This is she goes there and she's projecting herself. The phrase in Beloved is, when a woman is projecting her sexuality, the phrase Toni Morrison uses in that book is shining. And what is odd about that Beloved, the haunting presence, she is projecting her sexuality to no one particular. Sexuality is projected to a particular target. But in this case, so here she had a target. The target is King Barlow. And she says, this is worth watching, worth reading. Her voice sounds like a frightened child that calls homeward from some point miles away. Me? Yes, you, Barlow. This ain't the place for you. This ain't the place for you. Why? Because these are working class people. I know, but I've come for you. I've not come for the rest of these people. For me, for what? And he's completely dumb for the women are always smarter. They figured out already what she's there for. She manages to look deep and straight into his eyes. He's slow at understanding. Guffaws and giggles break out all around because the women have figured out that she is basically asking for him. Not only asking him, but asking for him. A coarse woman's voice remarks, so that's how the Dicty Niggers does it? What is Dicty Niggers? I use that in my book, The Novels of the Harlem. I use the phrase for one chapter, the Dicties and the Shines. Dicties was the phrase used for middle class people. Shines are the working class black. So she says, is that how that, because generally women don't present themselves sexually. They wait. They find ways to convey their messages. But they don't come and present. And he says, must give them credit for their gall. Esther doesn't hear, Barlow does. His faculties are jogged. Now he realizes he's woke, as a phrase being used these days. He understands what she's up to. The thought comes suddenly, that conception with it, and then she suddenly realizes, he's a horrible man. This guy is always drunk, he's ugly, he's huge, he's big. There's nothing particularly nice about him. And like a somnambulist, she wheels around and walks stiffly to the stairs, down the jeers and hoots, pelt her bluntly upon her back. She steps out, there's no air. This is the beautiful part, he does that many times. There's no air, no streets, and the town has completely disappeared. Does that remind you of anything else in American or British literature? I'm hinting at something. When I keep asking you about language and imagery, you remember Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. This comes as close to Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, or Hemingway's. You know, The Sun Also Rises, and some of his short stories that you can find. So if you were thinking of modernism, this would be high modernism. This is the modernism of Virginia Woolf, of T.S. Eliot, of James Joyce. But, and when did Love Song come? Was it 1940? Later.
22 or something.
22 is Wasteland.
Yeah, before that.
Before that.
1919.
1919?
1919.
Well, you can Google it, you are so smart. I think it's earlier than that. Just put Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock and the publication date. Anyway, the point, well, regardless of the date of Love Song, is that it falls within that milieu. And Jean Toomer expected that he would get some kind of a response. I mean, if Ulysses could shake the whole world, and if Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway and T.S. Eliot's poetry and Ezra Pound's poetry, why is it that, yeah?
1950 then poetry.
1950. In poetry, and then it was published as a book a little later. So, here is the book that sold 339 copies. Then it disappeared. Ellen Tate, a well-known Southern critic, tried to meet him. And I wrote in an article that they never met. I found out later that they did meet, but twice they planned to meet on just a small station on Louisiana Railroad. You know, it's like you tell somebody, I'll meet you at Maruthal train station, going from Delhi to, you know, Ambala, where I grew up. And then you don't find the person at the train, and the train has to go, so you get back into the train and you miss the opportunity to meet this great genius, Ellen Tate, who had promised to meet you there. So in a way, black American modernism and the white American and white British modernism never met. That's my symbol for this. But they meet in your minds now, because you can read Jean Toomer now, and I teach my modernism class, and I always include the high modernism, the regional modernism, and I call the blues modernism, or the Harlem Renaissance. And so anyway, and then final thing I asked you about Blood Burning Moon. What is interesting about this is that this woman, black woman Louisa, she can't think of a black lover who's serious, who wants to marry her, and the Tom Burwell, who's the white guy. And it's a very beautifully, very powerfully done story. If you look at the third paragraph of the story, a strange stir was in her. Indolently she tried to fix upon Bob or Tom at the cause of it. To meet Bob in the canebrake, as she was going to do in an hour, was nothing new. And Tom's proposal, or Tom is the black guy, forgive me, and Tom's proposal, which she felt on its way to her, could be indefinitely put off. Interesting. Separately, there's no unusual significance to either one. You see why Alice Walker admired? Because here is a male writer who captures the complex queer sexuality in a way. She feels a connection, a kind of sexual connection to the white guy, Bob Stone, and if she feels a desire and investment in the black man who wants to have a married life with her. And from the jumble came the stir that was strangely with her. The slow rhythm of her song grew hesitant and restless, rusty black and tan black hound lying in the dark tower. And then, of course, they have a description here how, when is this story taking place? Is it during slavery times? Anyone? No. It's well after this. It's the Jim Crow period, right? And still, Bob Stone thinks it's his right to walk to the homes of black women in the neighborhood and have that. By the way, this was not at all uncommon. Your sexual practice is on black women, but you marry a white woman and have family with her. But what I think Jean Toomer conveys is this entitlement. Even though slavery is over and these people are no longer slaves, men or women, you have still this sense of ownership. You can do what you like with them. And then of course it leads to the killing of Bob Stone by Tom. And then of course always there is a mob that forms. And if you go towards the end of the story, Tom's wrists were bound. The big man shoved him to the wall, burn him over it, drag him to the factory, and the mob pressed in from the side, taunt, just the description that you had in Strange Fruit. And like 100 mobs yelling, its yell thudded against the thick front, ghost of a slip. And then of course, you have the smell of the burning flesh that was evoked. By the way, we generally don't think of Richard Wright as a poet, do we? But in Black Voices, and I think I put it in your anthology, page 431, or approximately that page. The page numbers, the edition has not been changed, but the page number 2. You have a poem called Between the World and Me by Richard Wright? For 431, somewhere here. No, not here. 32 is there? Yeah. And do you have this poem? Yeah, this is the poem.
Between the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so you have it and you don't? Okay. You have the second page, but you don't have the first page. So maybe there's some discrepancy. We don't have the time to read it. You read this poem on your own. Most recently, famous black writer Tahiti Coates, he wrote the book and he uses this as the title, Between the World and Me. Now what is interesting about this poem is, I'm not going to read it. The first stanza describes the site of a lynching. Scattered traces of tar, restless arrays of feathers, the lingering smell of gasoline. That's how these people were burned. And people will take away mementos from the site. They brought children there. It was treated like a carnival. मेरा हो रहा है, बच्चों को दिखाना चाहिए. And then they'll take fingers and skulls and put them on the mantelpiece in the living room. This was their sense. And while I stood, my mind was frozen with a cold pity for the life that was gone. The ground gripped my feet and my heart was circled by icy walls of fear. You found it too? I see. And then if you go to the second stanza, then something very interesting is happening. What is happening? Now, the persona, which is not necessarily Richard Wright, but which could be Richard Wright, he becomes the person who is being lynched. Isn't that interesting? So, Richard Wright too, by the way, at the end of his life, he wrote thousands of haiku, the Japanese form, and only a few hundred have been published. Rest of them still remain unpublished. So this writer of political prose and this writer of fiction ended up his life writing thousands of haiku. And he says, and my skin clung to the bubbling hot tar, falling from me in limp patches, and the down and quills of the white feathers sank into my raw flesh, because they used to feather the body, and first before they burn them, they'll take them naked and put tar on it and put feathers on it, and to humiliate them. And then they'll take them to a tree outside the town, outside the village, and burn them. Then my blood was cooled mercifully, cooled by a baptism of gasoline. What a caustic phrase, baptism of gasoline. And in a blaze of red, I leaped to the sky as pain rose like water boiling my limbs. panting, begging, I clutched to the hot sides of death. But I am dry bones and my face a stony skull, staring in yellow surprise at the sun. So basically, in moving from the first stanza to the second stanza, he moved from an actual lynching to this impending fear of lynching that hangs over all blacks, particularly young black males, to this day. You know, because people will say, "Oh, what's wrong with them?" Emancipation took place in 1863. We gave them Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act in 1963. What more do they want? Why do they? Because memory is long, and family histories pass on these images and these fears, and then the happenings that still go on. Coming back to this, what happens in part 2? The part 2 is now going back to one story takes place in Chicago, the others are in Washington, D.C. Jean Toomer was from there. Once again, there are women, but now there are also men. I particularly recommend to you Bona and Paul. If you don't have time to read all of it, read Bona and Paul. And here you have Bona feeling very attracted to this light-skinned black man who is obviously passing. He's light-skinned to pass as white. So he lives in the dormitory, he lives in the hostel, and she's attracted to him, but she's attracted to him because she knows that he's black. It's what bell hooks, we talked about bell hooks yesterday. He talks about the eating the other, the attraction of the opposite, the forbidden love of the white for the black and the black for the white. And so towards the end of Bona and Paul, those of you who have, is that in Black Voices? I don't know. I don't think it's, no. But it's in, of course, in the book. Let's find the last paragraph. It's very similar to the Esther thing. So they go to this on a date, he's at a restaurant, and he has this possibility of going beyond the color, right? And the idealistic thing, and the guard is a black man, and the black man knows intuitively that even though he's pretending to be white, he's black, right? And so he gives him this funny look, and Paul he says, "You are wrong." "Yes, sir, brother, you are wrong. I came back to tell you to shake your hand and tell you you are wrong." Why? Because the guard, the black guard, the older black man, almost like an uncle, he had a disapproving look in his eyes, right? And he says that I came into the garden, and look at the imagery he comes up with. That's what's great about Toomer. Into life in the garden with one whom I did not know. That I danced with her and did not know her. That I felt passion, contempt and passion for her whom I did not know. That I thought of her. That my thoughts were matches thrown into a dark window. And all the while the gardens were purple like a bed of roses. That dark faces are petals of death. So he thinks of life, ideally, naively, as petals of dust, petals of flower. That I'm going out and gather petals. That I'm going out and know her whom I brought here with me to those gardens which are purple like a bed of roses would be at dusk. Paul and the black man shook hands. Older man knows more about life. We generally do. Sometimes young people listen, sometimes they don't. And he says when he reached the spot where they had been standing, Bona was gone. So here is this black man building this whole castle sand castle of going beyond color and love and passion. That includes suspicion and contempt. But the woman is gone because her interest was just experimental, just checking things out. They didn't work out. Goodbye. Right? So, and then the last section is based most directly on Kepnes. This book came out of a visit he made to Majardia. He grew up in Washington, D.C. His grandfather became the Lieutenant Governor of Louisiana during the Reconstruction. So look at what happened during the Reconstruction. There were 26 blacks who were in the House of Representatives. There were 2 black senators. There were many towns which had black mayors. And this guy became the lieutenant governor, and then something happened to the governor, I don't know the details. He became acting governor. And yet, after 1877, when my fellow Ohio Rutherford Hayes, he decided to abandon them. Everything fell apart. So Kepnes now is there. He's like a black man from the north who is scared of everything. If you remember, there's an incident at the beginning.
Yeah, he kills the pet which he has kept with him, the
Yeah.
dog, and strangles him, and then he's like, and he's not sure of it. Why is he doing so? His state of mind is not very. He's not actually in his senses. He is so. He's not able to understand the situation, and it also the description of the nature initially while we read Kepnes is also reflecting the state of mind of the protagonist, the Kepnes. And later we also see how he also talks about words not being, how words also play an important role, and how it's very difficult to just have meanings of a word in particular context. So I found Kepnes not very static in that sense. It is more broken than the earlier 2 parts.
Is that right? That's how you felt?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. Do we have a break soon?
Yes.
Yeah. Anyways, but this is very good. But I want you to think about the moment before he killed this rooster or this, why? Because it jumped and it scared him. And why is he scared? Because he has this wild imagination that a lynching is about to take place. I mean, these kinds of moments are not captured only by black writers. There's a wonderful short story by Stephen Crane about the Blue Hotel. I don't know if you ever read it. This sweet guy comes and he's in the West and he thinks this is cowboy land and there must be some great murders taking place, and he's playing cards and then he finds that the owner of the hotel where he's staying was cheating. So he finally wins it and he tells everyone to take a drink, and one guy is sitting there, a cowboy, he says, "Leave me alone," he doesn't listen. And the next thing that happens is the cowboy shoots him dead. And Stephen Crane has a beautiful line. This is the sum of your deed. I don't remember the words. This is what you wanted you to buy, and here's the receipt. Because if you come into a land like Georgia for a black man from the north, or for out west for a Swede who is unfamiliar with the traditions of the West, and you are expecting things that have been filled by cowboy books and cowboy movies. I mean, there were no movies in Stephen Crane's time, so I'm just jumping ahead. And you expect things to happen. Then you can have that thing happen to you. Because so in a way, Kepnes is in that. But towards the end, why don't we wait? Let's get the tea. Yeah, we'll finish it. Yeah, this is the right time to wait.
I have a few names to call out. So Deepika, Ghorpade Namrata, Shobana Gogoi, Rishi.